Alright, so now that we have our fish texture and modeled, now we're ready to start the rigging portion of it. And we're going to go over some key concepts about rigging as we do that. I'm not going to show you specifically how to model this or how to rig the entire fish. I really want you to play with the settings on the fish to really get yours to do what you want it to do. Everyone's going to have a different fish, so everyone's going to have different ways that they do their stuff. Okay, now the biggest thing is being able to adjust certain things. So like in this case, if I wanted to wiggle the top of this or I wanted to move it, you can see that the only points I have are these points right here. So this is literally all this part can do. So if I decided I wanted to add some more divisions to that, I can still do that at this point. Okay, and Maya's pretty good about, not screwing up your UVs too much. So now I have extra divisions up there, so now I should be able to modify that a little bit further. Okay, so I have extra stuff there. Now what we don't want to do is smooth it out, because when we smooth it out, it's going to get really crazy inside here. So I'm just adding a couple of divisions in some key spots that, now that I'm re-looking at this, maybe it could use a little bit more stuff. Now there is a glitch here where that part right there is turning out transparent, but I'm pretty sure when I render this that won't come out transparent. Yes, see, so it's just the glitch inside Maya that's causing it to look transparent when indeed it is not. Okay. Alright, so we'll just ignore that in the viewport for now. Okay. So if I needed a division here or there, I could add it relatively quickly. What I can't do though is do anything crazy. Like I can't grab this and start to move it around, because then that's going to move my texture, and I can't have that. Okay. Alright, so now that that's all set, what I need to do, maybe I'll just add just a couple more right there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just delete the history on him. Okay, I'm going to relabel this fish. And let me just save this as FishRig. Okay. So now let's first go over what we want to animate, or how we want to animate this. So what I want to do is I want to be able to have the fin kind of do this like little wavy motion. Okay. Now I could grab points and move it, but obviously it's not very user-friendly. So under the rigging menu, I'm going to go to deform, nonlinear, and this is where a lot of the stuff's going to happen, so I'm just going to pop that menu off. So I'm going to go to do several different things here, just so you can see it. So one of them is a bend. Okay, so if I do the bend, it comes with this little stick. I'm going to rotate the stick in line with my geometry. And then if I go over here to the bend and go to curvature, you can see how I can bend the geometry. Now obviously I don't want this side to move, I only want that side to move. So if I take my low bound to 0, you can see how it no longer moves that other side. It only moves that top part. Okay. Now when I pull this back further, I'm going to get more of a deformation on it, depending on where that's at. So if I pull it really far back though, you'll see that I hit this point where it's not really deforming any more of the fish. Okay. When I first started this, I went to vertices and I grabbed these here. Okay. Now what that does is it allows me to modify these points, and those points only. So if I decided that I wanted to add some points in later, obviously I could do that, but it's always easier just to kind of grab the points you think you might be using in there, and then basically you're deleting them afterwards, or not including those afterwards based on where that handle is. Okay, so I think I want to go back probably about this far to handle that. Now what I don't want to do is start influencing this one, because then as the tail's spinning, then also this is. Okay, so for now I'm just going to keep it simple and just do the bend on there. Okay, low bound's going to be at 0, curvature is here, I can pull this back, and then you can see how much more movement I get on this tail. Okay. Now again, this isn't something we're going to want to be going that far and going that far. This is just going to be a subtle movement like this. Just something to make it look like, you know, he's like flapping his fin, kind of swimming in the water. All right. So that's one thing I want to do. Now I did do the bend deformer on that, but I could also use any one of these other ones that would apply, like sine wave. Okay. Still has the same handle. I still rotate it in line with the object. You'll see it still has that low bound and high bound, so I'm going to turn that off and accidentally turn my envelope off. And then amplitude, you'll see, is going to take this curve and it's going to put a little bulge right here. Now this is different because if I go to offset, you can see how that's now animating. Okay, because it's offsetting that curve. So it's kind of a neat way to animate it because now it looks more like the tail is swimming in there. It's not just bending, it's actually wavy. So when one part is facing one way, another part's going another way. Okay. Now it does look pretty abrupt though in where this is kind of stopping right here. So I can take my drop off up, and what the drop off does is it drops it off. So we don't have that hard edge. So now let's go to offset again. Okay, and it looks definitely a bit better than without the drop off. Oops. Or drop off at 0. It was very hard. So there it is at 1. I probably want to go with a -1. There we go, there. And now the drop off is happening. Let me go to the top view and scoot this over so you can see it. So there's no drop off. There it is at -1. So you see the -1 is dropping off this side. It's getting rid of that side being deformed. So it's just the tips now being deformed. And as I pull this back further, I'm going to get more of that being deformed. Okay, and even though this doesn't go past it, it kind of stays right there. You can see how we're still deforming it. Now I could pull this back a bit further, scale this up a little bit, and it'll make it a more subtle motion. Alright, so that looks pretty neat. And you'll see that the limits for this are going from -10 to +10. But we could type in more. I could type in 50 here. Oops. I guess we can't go more. At one point in time we were able to go more. But that's fine. We'll just leave it like that. Okay, so we could adjust this further. I could even animate certain features of this to do other stuff. We also have wavelength. So if I change this wavelength down, you can see how I'm getting more waves in here, which is again adjusting the effect on it. Okay, that actually makes the offset or the drop off seem a little bit more obvious. Put it back to 1. You can see where the drop off is now. Here it's been dropped off and it's really strong there. -1, it's really subtle here and really strong there. So wavelength, I like to keep it probably about 1, maybe even 2, just to keep a nice smooth movement in those back fins. Okay, so for the back fin, I mean, that looks pretty good too. Alright, so let's delete that. What else do we have? We also have wave. Let's grab these. Let's go to wave. And wave is going to work in a similar fashion. Again, we rotate this line. There's always going to be a line with these. And that's the direction of the movement. Okay. And then right here we have amplitude. If I just go to offset and start playing with it, nothing's going to happen because there's no height to it. It's not until I start putting in a height of that wave that it starts moving. Now in this case, the wave is actually going up and down and not left and right. Okay, so I need to rotate this also in this direction. Right there, 90 degrees that direction. And then I'll start to get something, oops, that is wavy. Now this is actually waving from the center. It kind of looks like the center is being dipped in and out. And that's what's causing the wave. It's more like a rippling effect. Okay, now again we have drop off. Okay, or remember the other one was -1. We also have radius, so I can change the radius of this. And I have the minimum radius too, which is like where the won't be affected. Okay, so like right here, nothing will be affected in the middle, but it'll only be affecting in the outside. So for this case, not really relevant. Go to offset again. And you can see we get a similar look, but instead of this one going like the sine wave, this one's actually rippling from the center out. Okay, might be a little bit more apparent. If I put it on a plane. So I put this on a polygon plane like this. Now up the divisions to, let's say, 50, and we'll do a sine wave. Okay, so I'll take the amplitude up to 0.1. I'll rotate it so that it's deforming the correct way. There we go. So now you can see the sine wave is going like this. Okay, that's kind of like how a fish would be moving. Now the wave, this one, is moving from the center out. Okay, and then as I start to play with stuff like the drop off, you can see how it's no longer affecting those edges. It's kind of rippling outward. As I adjust things like wavelength, I'm going to get more waves inside here because the wavelength, each length is shorter. Okay, so really quick, if I needed some raindrop or something to make it look like it's kind of, you know, dripping, something from Jurassic Park, I could do that very easily. We also have drop off position, which is kind of controlling where the drop off is happening. So it's starting right here at the center, it's very strong and then weaker, or it's dropping off or it's starting strong here and dropping off there. Okay, so again, just another option to play with. Okay, and then here's the bend one again, just so again you can see this. And these are going to be the three that I'm typically going to be playing with on this fish guy. There we go. Okay, so there's that. So you can see the curvature is bending up or bending down. So if you're doing something like a piece of paper or whatever, you can use that. All right. So now we have the idea that we would use something like the bend deformer. Actually, I wouldn't use the wave. I would just use the bend or the sine wave. And those would typically work. Now, just so you can see what the other ones do, flare, and again, we have our pole, so we can rotate it. Flare would do this. There's a start and an end. So I can go to the start, and I can go, okay. And then there's the end, it does the same thing, but the other side. And then there's a curve, so we can adjust how the center is then going to be affected. So if I want to do something really cartoony, I could use that. Now these could also be used for modeling tools. So if I wanted to change the shape of my fish afterwards, I could do that. I would just select at this point, delete the history, and then go from there. But that's essentially what flare would do. It allows us to flare the object. We did sine before. Squash we've done before, but just so you can see it again. See, I'm squashing the fish. Okay, and again, depending on which direction we're at, is what that squash is going to look like. Okay, and then we have twist, and I'm sure you can imagine what twist is going to do for this. We'll twist the fish. Okay, so these could also be used in conjunction with each other. We don't have to stick with just one. If we were animating the fish to do certain things where, you know, we would use twist and bend and squash, you know, those might be applicable. Okay, so in all cases of what we're going to be doing for these individual fins, because that's all we're focusing on at this moment, is we're just going to grab the individual fins. Okay, here's the vertices. And then we would assign either the bend or we would assign the sine wave. Okay, so that would go up here too. And again, I like to make sure I grab enough of this to actually do some damage, but not so much that I'm going to be affecting the rest of the fish. Because if the rest of the fish looks like it's jelly, then it's not really going to look very nice. So with something like this, I'm grabbing just those top points where they meet, but not the ones on the actual fish body. There we go. Okay, now again, for yours, your fish points are in different spots. You have to grab the correct ones. But then I can go to something like bend for this, shrink it down, lower the curvature, and then you can see how it's going to bend. And again, it's bending the low bound, so let's turn the low bound off. Okay, so maybe I'll lower that further. So this will be your first step, is just to kind of go through and play with it just to see how each one's going to go. When you're done with it, just delete the handle, okay? For each one of these fins, you want to just test out that thing. So we have these two fins here. We have this fin, we have that fin, we have these two, we have that. Okay? That's on my specific fin. Okay, and this is going to just add a level of realism to it that we otherwise may not receive. All right? So now the next thing we're going to do is let's look at ways that we can control these. Okay? So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to add all of these little bend deformers and sine wave deformers to this. And then when I come back, I'll have them all there, but I want to then rig them so that I can control them. All right, so now that I have all of those in here, you'll see that, I go to my outliner, they're all labeled, so tail fin, dorsal fin, pectoral fin left, pectoral fin right, pelvic fin, anal fin, okay? Now something to keep in mind with that is that even though I've called these things tail fin, dorsal fin, whatever, when I go to animate them, you'll see that these inputs and outputs are still labeled with their old names, so sign 5, sign 4, sign 3. So it's very difficult for me to do anything with this afterwards. So I want to go to each one of these and just verify that I renamed this too. So I'm just going to put the tail fin underscore sign 1. Okay, and then dorsal fin, go to its inputs, and then just rename this dorsal fin underscore bend 1. Then go to this, and you can even double click it and copy it, and then just paste it before and just include an underscore afterwards. Copy that, and then go to public fin, copy that. And this will just make things easier to find their names afterwards when we're actually typing things in. Okay, so now we have everything labeled correctly. And if I grab the fish, you'll see that each one of these now has their specific name assigned to it. All right, so let's save our work. All right, so now we need to rig the fish. So if I go to my create mode and I create a locator. Now every rig is going to start off with some sort of controller, okay? And a lot of times it's going to be a locator, because locators are great because they don't render, and then we can easily grab them because we can see them. Even if I'm way back here, you can still see that locator, and I can still grab it and use it to control certain things, okay? So what I want to do is add all my controls to this specific thing. I want to be able to grab this and control the fin movement up here, the fin movement back there, here, here, and here, all over the place. Okay, so stuff to be aware of. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my translates to 0. I like this to be kind of at the center of the fish. And I'm using, like I said, a locator, but you could also use something like a cube. I could actually create a cube and use this as my controlling object. Okay, and sometimes people will use items as a controlling object. For now, I'm just going to use a locator. Okay, so making it big, I'm going to go to modify and freeze my transforms. I just like to make sure my translates and rotates are all frozen. There we go. If I froze my scale, just so you can see on a locator, it resets it back to nothing. So that's why I don't freeze the scale. Alright, so now I need to create some controls over here. So I'm going to go under modify, and I'm going to say add attributes. Okay, keep your outliner open, makes it nice and easy. I want to separate first all of these with my custom attributes. So I'm going to do a couple underscores, and then just hit add. So I get a couple underscores. So then I can do this, is just type the names. So I can say tail fin, dorsal fin. Okay, now as I do that, just so you can see this, it's just creating an attribute down here. Now those attributes are limitless, meaning I can click and drag forever and they're just going to keep going. Like the one attribute we had where it went from 0 to 10, or a negative 10 to positive 10, that's what we want to have for these. Okay, I don't want to have any of these just kind of sitting around where I can have them go crazy, because I don't want them to go crazy. So I'm going to delete those attributes. Okay, very easy, add attributes, delete attributes. Okay, so now let's add this again. So I'm going to go to tail fin, and I typed it capital T lowercase f. Just so you can see this a little bit bigger. That's how I label my stuff. Okay, everything's lowercase except for the second, or the every word is uppercase except for the first word. Okay, makes things easy. Tail fin. So let's look at the other controls in here. So this is a float, meaning that it can be a decimal point like this. That's what we want. The minimum value should be 0, and the maximum value should be, let's say, 5. Okay, so I'm going to add that in there. So now if I go to tail fin, you'll see that the only goes from 0 to 5. And this is going to be like a speed controller. Okay, so now let's grab the next one. So I'm going to go to dorsal fin. Same typing. lowercase dorsal, capital F for fin. Minimum is 0, maximum is 5. And let's go to pectoral, fin, and then a left, because left was the first one there, 0 and 5. And then a pectoral fin underscore right, 0 and 5. And then a pelvic fin, 0 and 5. And then an anal fin, 0 and 5. Okay. So now inside here, you'll see that these got labeled pretty easily to read. Just so you can see what happens if you don't label it correctly. My fish face. I guess that one came in okay too. No, whatever. They fixed that. It used to not come in nice and neat, so whatever. Also under edit, add attribute, edit attribute, delete attribute. You can even duplicate an attribute too. So if you like the way that pelvic fin left works, you can duplicate it. Maybe not. Whatever. We can add attributes, edit, and delete. We can go to edit. We can pick one of these names. We can change the values if we need to. Whatever. I'm not sure why that duplicate is not working. Could be another Maya glitch. All right. So now that we have those, they're not going to do anything. Okay. Taking tail fin up or dorsal fin up or any of these other ones up will do absolutely nothing. Okay. Hitting play does nothing. We haven't set these things up to be controlled yet. All we've done is set up the fact that the control is here, or the ability to control it is here, but we haven't done anything to this offset to make it actually wiggle. Okay? So what we want to do is have this thing move without us having to actually keyframe it. So what we don't want to do is come in here, go to frame 1, set a key, go to frame 60, set a key, and then we'll have this kind of animation, but that's not the kind of animation we want to do to this, because we might have 50 of these things. You know, we don't have to animate each one separately. Alright, so here's how we're going to play this. We can do what's called a set driven, we can do an expression, we can do some connection editor stuff. We're going to stick with the expressions for some of these. Okay, so I'm going to grab my controller here, and I'm going to go to animation editors, expression editor, and you'll see that the controller gets loaded. Okay, now this doesn't really do anything yet. Okay, this is just a way for us to type stuff in. So I know that in here I have my tail fin, and if I click on the word tail fin, my tail fin's visibilities, translates, rotates, gets loaded. If I click on the tail fin sign, then click the name, then I'll get that offset. Because remember, offset is where we're going to be doing our animation. So now what I can do is take this offset and just drag it with the middle mouse button down here. So if I want the offset to be equal to 1, I could say the offset equals 1. Hit create. And now that offset equals 1. If I want the offset to equal 5, make it equal 5. Okay. Or I can make it equal 2.22 or 2.25. Okay. So I can make it just equal to something. And all I'm doing there is just typing in the name of the object and then putting it equal to a value. 2 or 1 or 2.25. And all that simply does is just take that number and actually replace it into that. That's all it's doing. Okay, that doesn't animate it though. So now we want to animate this thing. So if I, let's say, take the offset and I made it equal to, let's say, time. Okay, so now I'm at frame 1, and you'll see that my offset is 0.042. So I'm going to rewind this and then hit play. And you can see how we get this nice slow movement happening on here. So what this does is it takes that offset and it allows us to connect it to the actual time in the time slider. Okay, this might be a little bit more obvious if I made it equal to frame. Okay, so right now it's equal to whatever frame I'm on. So right now I'm on frame 77, so it equals 77. When I go to frame 78, it equals 78. So that's why we're seeing it flip over and over, because every time that this offset goes from 0, oops, we're locked in now because we have an expression. Let's delete the expression. 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, you can see how it's just offsetting. It's those incremental numbers like the decimal that's really causing this offset to look nice. Okay, so we equaled it to frame, and it just flips over and over and over again. We equaled it to time, and we get this nice smooth motion, because with time, when we're at frame 1, it's actually frame 1 equals 1 divided by however many our frames per second is. Okay, so in this case, if I go to my settings, I'm at 24. Okay, so it'll actually be 1 divided by 24. Okay, so if I went to frame 1 and I reset this offset, oops, tail fin underscore sine 1 dot offset equals time. And I have something spelled wrong. I have this right there. I forgot an E. Okay, then I go to my calculator. 1 divided by 24. You see I get 0.41666666. Okay, which is roughly 0.042, which is what we got here, which is what we said here. Okay, so that means that frame 2 would equal 2 divided by 24. 0.083. So this is where we're getting those decimal points from, which again is what's causing this smooth motion to happen. Now let's say the fish is moving very, very quick or very, very slow. We may want to change the speed at which this is happening. Okay, so what I can do is, close that. I'm going to click on the word offset, go up to edit, go to expressions, and it pops me right into that window with that expression. Because I can take that time and I can multiply it times the number. So let's say I multiply it times 5. Okay, so now what it's going to do is it's going to go 5 times quicker. Alright, let's multiply out times 12. 12 times quicker. This should really be pretty obvious what's happening. Okay, very, very quick. If I multiply it times 24, okay, so quick. But if we look at it frame by frame, you'll see we're basically getting what we had before when we were dealing with frame. Okay, so we took the frame number, which is 2, multiply it times 24, we would get 48. Okay, so 48 is our value for this, and then that's our value. So that's why it's going so slow right there. Okay, oops, sorry, the time. At frame 1, it's multiplied times 24, and we get that value of 1. Okay, you ignore that math. It's just going to confuse you. But essentially, what it's doing is we're just multiplying it times whatever the frame rate is. So time times 24 is exactly the same thing as just saying frame. Okay, and frame divided by 24 is the same thing as time. Okay, so we're getting the exact same motion with that one. If I rewind it to frame 1, you'll see my offset is 0.042. If I go to frame 2, 0.083. Okay, so it's the same exact thing. I can reference both just by doing some simple math. Now, that doesn't help us still, because having this set to time is great. It looks wonderful, but it doesn't give us the ability to control it outside of this box. Okay, but what I can do is I have my locator. And my locator has an attribute called tail fin. Okay, let me rename my locator to fish controller. So with this tail fin, I can set. Let me grab my fin here. Let me grab this. Let me grab that. Let me go to my expression editor. I can set my locator, my fish controller, to be multiplied times that value. Okay, so I have to say the fish controller has this control called tail fin. Alright, and it's just going to be multiplied times that. So I'm saying that the sign, the little wavy thing on the fish's tail, the little offset control, because that's what's controlling the movement, is going to be equal to time, which is down here, multiplied times whatever the fish controller's tail fin attribute is. Okay, so if I grab this and look at that, right now it's 0. So basically it should be 0 times the time, and that's what it should be. So if I hit play, we'll see we get no movement at all. If I type 1 here, we'll get time. So this is going to move in the same rate that we were dealing with before. Okay, if I rewind it, if I grab that fin control, if I go to my tail fin sign, you'll see the first frame is 0.042, the next frame is 0.083. If I grab this again and set the tail fin to 2 and hit play, now we're moving twice as fast. If I set it to 3, 3 times as fast. If I set it to 4, 5, 6 won't let me go because 5 is our max. Okay? And I think 5 is probably as fast as we're going to need to go with something like this. So that seems to work pretty good, because now it's moving just 5 times as fast. Okay? Or 1 time as fast. Or super duper slow. This is like Fish Matrix. Okay, so you can see how slow that's actually going, but the point is that I have control over this attribute now, where I can control it from within or from without having to go in here and grab this and grab that and then start to set keyframes or have to go in the graph editor or do any of that nonsense. Okay, so I can do that for these other ones too. So anyone that has sign on it, like this one here, anal fin 5, I can do that too. Now if I go to the expression editor for this, you'll see my other expression's gone. If I go to select filter by expression name and click on the expression, here it is. So I can actually type all my expressions in one spot, and that'll make things a lot easier. So this one is called anal fin sign 5 offset. I'm going to do the same thing. Time times fish controller dot anal fin. Now everything has to be typed exactly like it is inside Maya. So anal fin lowercase a capital F lowercase a capital F for all these things. Okay, I hit edit, I get an error because this is supposed to be with an E, and there we go. Okay, so spelling does count in this, so we have to make sure that we're paying attention to all that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I have a couple other controllers. Okay, I have 4 other sign controllers. 2, 3, and 4. The anal fin was like the last one. Okay, so number 2, if I look over here, my list was my pectoral fin left. Left. Okay, and then copy that. And this one should be right. Now if I don't remember the name of something and I hit edit, you'll see that I get a red arrow down here. It's saying, oops, come on, it's saying something you've supplied is wrong. So I'm going to grab everything and copy it. So I did Control A, Control C, And I'm just going to paste it in here. Oops. And shrink this down so it's not incredibly large. There we go. Because once I click off and I start clicking on other stuff, it may be hard to get back to the spot, okay? Or I might accidentally close it and then that's gone. So it's always good to copy and paste it because you still have that expression that you can go back to. Okay, so I'm going to grab my fish controller here and I'm going to go to Window, Animation Editors, Expression Editor, grab the expression, and you'll see that definitely it is gone. So it's a good thing I copied it, so I can copy this and paste it in there and see what I typed wrong. So pectoral fin underscore left underscore sign 2. Fish controller. This anal fin part is correct. Obviously, it should be going to the pectoral, right? Pectoral fin left. Right. That's not a pelvic fin. It probably didn't like this. This one was probably the one it didn't like because that doesn't exist. Anal fin underscore sign 4 doesn't exist. So if I go to pelvic fin, I can see it's called pelvic fin underscore sign 4. Okay, so this is just pelvic. Okay, still invalid after edit. Now you can also click the script editor here and it'll tell you what's wrong. So it says it doesn't know what pectoral fin left or pectoral fin right is. Okay, on the fish controller. So if I click on the fish controller, pectoral fin left, pectoral fin right. It looks like I've typed them correctly, but let's verify it. So if I go to edit, channel names, and I change this to long, it'll show me their exact name. So in this case, I have a underscore, and this is a lowercase r. Okay, and the same thing for left. I have an underscore and a lowercase l. So now let's hit edit. Nope, it's still wrong. Pectoral fin. Alright, so that should already control by expression, pectoral fin right. Oops, I forgot that. There we go. Oops, sign 3, not sign 2. There we go. So again, very important that you get the names correct because if you're one character off or there, it doesn't work. So I'm typed several of these at once. You could type one at a time and just verify that each one works. Okay, so now if we go back and we hit play, you'll see that the back fin is moving, but nothing else is. Again, these are all down to 0. So let me put them to 1. And now you're going to see that our fish is actually starting to come to life a little bit. Okay? And here's where the important part is. I can look at this and say, you know what? I'm not liking the way some of these are moving. Look at the fins up here. These are both moving in sync, but maybe it's a little bit too in sync. Okay? So if I grab that locator, I can maybe make one 1.2, and maybe the other one is 0.8. There we go. So now they're just a little bit off sync, but that looks pretty good though. This one down here, this fin here, it's not moving at all. It's barely moving. That's the pelvic fin. Okay? So for the pelvic fin, maybe I'll put that up to 5. Alright, that's too little. There you go. So maybe 2 is good for that one. There we go. So now they're all kind of off. I don't want them all to be perfectly in sync. We're all spinning at the same time. I want them to all have their own little offset. And that'll add to the realism of this shot. Now the one I didn't touch yet is this one up here. Okay, I haven't touched that fin yet because it's different. Because we don't have an offset, we have curvature. Okay, and the way the curvature works is that we're going from a negative value to a positive value. Alright, so I need to go and adjust that one. So let's go into the curvature, go to my expressions. You'll see I don't see my expression there, but I want all my expressions to be together. So under select by expression name, click that. And then I can type it in. So that's dorsal fin underscore bend 1 dot curvature equals, now just for fun I'll set it to time times fish controller dot dorsal fin. Okay, now I did include a semicolon at the end of each of these. The semicolon is definitely important because we need to make sure that we have something to break apart the lines. Alright, so now let's look at the top of this. Let me take my dorsal fin up to like 5. You'll see it's not really waving, it's just kind of like bending to one side. If I gave myself a lot more frames and I click and drag, you'll see that eventually it's just going to keep dragging over. It's not going to be going back and forth like we want it to do. Okay, so if I grab that controller and I grab the curvature again, go to the expression, I can't use this same expression on here. I have to use a different expression. Okay, I still want to multiply it by this after I'm done, but I'm going to use something else in the meantime. So I'm going to use what's called a sine wave. It's very similar to these things, except it's going to be used to control that curvature. So the way it works is it needs a variable. So sine, parenthesis, time, end parenthesis. That gives me a sine wave. So now if we were very close to this, we could see it. And it's moving very slow. I'll go a little bit faster so we can maybe see it a little bit better. It's very, very slow. Okay. So it's basically fluctuating this curvature between 1 and -1. That's what this is doing. So I need this to happen a lot bigger. So that's where I can multiply this times 30, let's say. And now we're going to go between -30 and +30. Okay, so now we're waving it a lot further. Then I can say maybe not 30, maybe 90. Okay, so now we're going to be going between 90 and -90. So I still may not be happy with the speed at which it's going. Okay, so this is where I can control the speed, because I can multiply the time, just like we did up here. Time times something. Multiply this time times that fish controller value. And now what that's going to do is it'll control how fast this goes left to right. Okay, so right now the dorsal fin is set to 1, which is exactly what we were looking at before. So let's set it to 5. And you'll see that now it's going to go back and forth 5 times as fast. Okay, so maybe I'll make this 2. There we go. So that looks pretty good. All right. So now that the fish is rigged, if I were to grab the fish and move him, you'll see that none of the stuff goes with him. I hit play, you see that it still moves. Stuff is still moving way over there. but it's not really what we want to do. We want all the stuff to move together with the fish. So I'm going to grab the fish controller all the way to tail fin. So I grabbed all of my deformers plus my controller, and I'm just going to middle drag it. I can middle drag on top of fish, but I may want to keep that separate. So I think I'm just going to grab everything and just group it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call this fish anim. So now if I move the fish anim, you'll see that everything does indeed go with it, and everything is still working. Okay. Alright, so we're going to save the video here, because now our fish is essentially rigged. The next step is going to be to actually go through and animate the fish. Now we're going to do it a little bit differently than we've done stuff before, so you have to stay tuned for that one.